This year's trade deadline did not disappoint one bit. We saw quite a few young stars get a change of scenery, and multiple contenders made quality moves in an effort to push them over the edge. But the one major trade that has everybody talking is James Harden to the Philadelphia 76ers. In theory, adding a former MVP who continues to play at a high level next to a current MVP frontrunner would yield some ridiculous results. But will they be able to stay fully healthy? Are they capable of successfully playing off each other's strengths? And are they the best duo in the NBA? Although there are some questions as to how the dynamic between James Harden and Joel Embiid will work, it feels like the concerns are slightly overstated. Pairing an all-time perimeter creator with an elite two-way big is a recipe for success that has a phenomenal track record. The first instance of this was seen in 1968 when Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain joined forces on the Lakers, making 4 NBA Finals appearances in 5 years and having one of the best seasons ever in 1972. Just 2 years after that duo was formed, we saw Oscar Robertson join Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the Bucks, winning a title in their first year together and having one of the greatest 2-season stretches we've ever seen. Of course, Kareem also played with Magic Johnson, and although their primes didn't line up too much, they were still extremely dominant throughout the entire 1980s. Jump to 1996 and we saw the Lakers trade for Kobe Bryant next to the already proven Shaquille O'Neal, and by 2001 they were probably the most unstoppable duo ever. Just surrounding those two with competent role players was enough to essentially run through the league, and the plus 20.7 relative net rating they put up in that 0-1 playoff run makes even the 2017 Warriors jealous. The most recent instance of an all-time perimeter creator being paired with an elite two-way big was in 2019 with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Although they've had some injuries and some questionable roster construction around them, they did win a title in their first season together in dominant fashion, showing that to this point, there hasn't been a duo of this archetype to not win a title. Will Harden and Embiid break this trend? Only time will tell, but I definitely feel like they'll fit better than most people are giving them credit for. Of course, Embiid runs a majority of his offense in isolation, most commonly with his back to the basket, and although he generates a large amount of opportunities when slowing it down and handling the ball, there are some reasons to believe his production could increase in these spots with the addition of Harden. One major issue the 76ers have had all season is actually getting Embiid the ball once he steals off position. He's got an absurd catch radius and quick reactions that make him virtually unstoppable once he gets his man deep in the paint, and having a guy like James Harden who can make those advanced entry passes through very tight windows is a nightmare for any defense. Even when Embiid does slow it down for an isolation, whether that's in the post or facing up from the wing, it's that much harder to guard when Harden's man can't really provide much help. Don't get me wrong, he's far from an active off-ball player, but he's still a threat to hit spot-up threes and is lethal attacking downhill off the catch. You have to imagine Philly implementing some offensive sets that clear an entire side of the floor for just Harden and Embiid, forcing defenses to make a decision on whether they would rather live with one of the game's most unstoppable isolation scorers in a one-on-one scenario or one of the best playmakers of all time working with an advantage, and neither are very good options. It's also worth noting that we've never actually seen Harden next to an elite scoring big like this. It's always been some variation of pick and roll rim runners or vertical lob threats, and having a high level advantage creator who generally pulls defenses away from the perimeter could see him playing some of the most efficient basketball of his career. That's if he gets back to the level he was once playing at, because since returning from his hamstring injury, he clearly hasn't had the same level of burst or lift, which has most noticeably hurt his scoring productivity. At 57.6% true shooting, his scoring efficiency is the worst it's been since his first year in the league, albeit still above average. Even if he isn't able to get back to that level though, he remains a solidly efficient 20+ point per game scorer with all-time playmaking capabilities, and is still one of the best pick and roll ball handlers of all time. That pick and roll game is Harden's cup of tea, and because we've never really seen Joel Embiid used as a consistent role man, this has raised some more questions about the dynamic between the two. Sure, Joel hasn't been the game's most active screener and isn't much of a rim running lob threat, but I would argue that he adds another dimension to the pick and roll that we've never seen next to Harden, which just might offset any weaknesses. Think about all of the rollers Harden has played with in just the past 5 years. There was Clint Capella who could catch any lob thrown within a mile radius of the basket, but couldn't do much with the ball or outside the paint. Then came the weird stint with Russell Westbrook, playing sort of an amped up Draymond Green role where Harden would create an advantage and quickly dump it off for him to attack the rim, but again, not really doing much on the perimeter. In Brooklyn, they used all kinds of different rollers. The inside guys like Nick Claxton and DeAndre Jordan couldn't really do much outside of lobs, and the outside guys like Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge could really only pop or fade to the perimeter. If you can't see what I'm getting at, every roll man Harden has ever played with was either only dangerous working inside or out, never both. Joel Embiid, however, is a threat to score from anywhere on the court, while having a strong handle and being a much improved decision maker, meaning there's no shortage of the type of pick and rolls they can run, and no specific defensive coverage to slow them down. Say the opposing strategy is to blitz the ball handler. Harden will get it to Embiid almost every time, and I'm not sure it's in the defense's best interest to let him work downhill with an advantage, especially with how good his passing and decision making have become. Falling into drop coverage is another option, but again, how viable is it when the screener is elite from mid-range and solid from the three-point line? This is what we saw quite a bit between Harden and Aldridge, using that rim pressure to force the big into rotation before leaving it for an easy mid-range, except now these passes are going out to someone who can continue the play off the dribble. Whether it's shedding a contest with one step and barreling towards the basket, or bouncing into a pull-up jumper of his own, what Embiid is capable of doing from the perimeter directly after the catch is nothing short of fantastic. And next to a playmaker creating a bit more space for him to initiate these attacks, good luck defending him. These two clearly have the talent to supercharge Philadelphia's offense to another level, and although there are some nice complementary skills between them, there are still adjustments to be made. Harden has to be an aggressive attacker. During his stint in Brooklyn, there were times where he would just fall into a state of passiveness and not generate the highest quality opportunities for himself or others. He also has to keep the offense flowing when Embiid initiates from the post and force defenses into a scramble as opposed to resetting possessions into an isolation or high pick and roll. On Embiid's end, he'll probably have to play just a bit more off the ball, whether that's as a screener, down low battling for position, or just on the perimeter, which I don't think he'll have any problems doing because of how much better he's gotten in those areas. There's no doubt in my mind that growing pains will exist between the two, at least for the first few games or so, but just the sheer court warping gravity and talent that both of these guys have on the offensive end, along with the complementary skills that should be elevated next to each other, this is not an offense any team should want to have to scheme for come playoff time. And as weird as it may sound, I also love this move for their defense. Because of how the 76ers roster was built, at times Embiid was the only player on the court capable of actually generating efficient opportunities for his team, which forced him into an absurd offensive load and took away from his defensive motor. Because Harden will inevitably take away some of that load, Embiid will likely look much more engaged on the defensive end. And as one of the best rim protectors in the NBA, this could be a huge key in taking Philly to that next level. I really only have one major concern with this group, and that's Doc Rivers' rotations. He's never been a coach that's known to stagger his stars' minutes, but that is imperative in maximizing this duo. As hard as it may be to stop them working off each other, they're still two of the very best floor raisers on the planet, and allow your team to throw out units with lower end offensive talent and still keep them very productive. I would love to see Maxey and Embiid still getting a large share of minutes together, while Harden can play in more lineups next to guys like Matisse Thybulle and Danny Green, covering all deficiencies on the defensive side of the ball. There are definitely still some questions on how exactly this trade will turn out in the long run. Can Joel Embiid and James Harden stay healthy enough for a long playoff run? Will they be a good fit and play off each other's strengths successfully? Is Doc Rivers going to maximize their production by implementing the best rotations and scheme possible? And are the surrounding pieces good enough to compete for a title? Only time will tell when it comes to answering these questions, but in my personal opinion, I view them as serious Eastern Conference contenders and arguably the best duo in the NBA. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website, podcast, and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of this new duo and where you think the 76ers stand in the NBA. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.